A very warm welcome, wherever you are in the world, to Oxford, and in particular to St Mary's, Iffley. I'm Andrew the Vicar here. Here is where we gather each Advent, surrounded by candles in the darkness of the evening, to watch, to wait, to hope. Sadly, it's not possible this year to do that in this holy place, but we can still watch and wait and hope and pray. I'm delighted that you've joined us for the second of these Advent reflections, to pray in the darkness of our world that the light of Christ may shine in our hearts and lives. Roger Wagner, who has contributed so much to the life of this church over the years, is now offering us tonight a second reflection for Advent.
The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has shined. Those lines from the prophecies of Isaiah are the basis of the next of the great O antiphons that we're going to listen to this evening. As I said last week, these antiphons, which go back to the 6th or 7th century, were sung on the 7 Sundays leading up to Christmas. And they're called the great O antiphons because each one begins with the word O sapientia, O wisdom, O Emmanuel, O God with us. And they all contain the word veni, come. We began last week with O sapientia, O wisdom, and in the sequence that was followed by O Adonai, O Lord, O radix J.A.C, O root of Jesse, O clavis David, O key of David. Now, as I said, based on the great prophecies of Isaiah, the titles that he gives to the longed-for coming Messiah. So Isaiah talks of the key of the house of David, which will bring out the prisoners from the prison, and them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. And the antiphon that we're going to hear this evening, O Oriens, O dawn, O dayspring, uses a similar phrase about dwelling in darkness and the shadow of death. In this year of COVID-19, we don't have to imagine ourselves living in darkness and the shadow of death. We're all there. But that means we can all share this prayer for light to come, for dawn. The composer J.A.C Redford, who has set these antiphons, has not only set the Latin antiphons, but also the sonnets that have been written around them by the poet Malcolm Guite. And as we listen to J.A.C.'s music, you will see the lines of Malcolm's sonnet, and behind those some of my images, which I've used to try and illustrate both words and music. J.A.C sets the antiphon with a kind of plain chant, which, as I said last week, reminds us of the great cloud of witnesses of Christians throughout the ages who have celebrated Advent and who surround us as we celebrate Advent this year. But Malcolm's poem then almost immediately takes us on to our most basic experiences of light and of dawn. First light, and then first lines upon the east, which I illustrate with a painting I did of Bardsey Island, Innis Inley, the island of 20,000 saints, which for centuries during the Middle Ages was the great centre of pilgrimage in Wales. Malcolm's poem then goes on to take us beyond our immediate physical experience of light to its hidden source, the dayspring, the eternal primavera. And Jack sets these words with wonderful ascending, haunting layers of rising voices. And the image that I've used to try and illustrate this is a mosaic that I designed recently and has been made by the mosaicist Oliver Budd, and which will shortly be installed in a church in London, St Andrew's, Bayswater. And the roots of this image go back to a picture of by William Blake called Glad Day, which he in turn based on a Renaissance diagram of a man standing in a circle. And I've gone back to that root and transformed it again into an image from the book of Revelation of an angel standing in the sun. What is light? Well, it's that by which we see truth, by which we see reality, and so it's our most basic metaphor for spiritual truth, for spiritual reality. It's that by which we find our way out of darkness and fear and despair and confusion. So it's an image of salvation. It's the opposite of death in that it's that which brings light and life to the earth. And so it's an image of life and an image of that love which is at the heart of all life. Malcolm's sonnet ends by saying, "The darkness was a dream." The shadow of death is real, but still a dream from which we will wake. And in a recollection of its first line, the sonnet ends, "Beyond your long last line, the dawn is breaking," which I illustrate with a transfigured golden version of my Innis Enley painting. The people who dwell in darkness have seen a great light. All the metaphors of light, of dawn in Isaiah and throughout the Bible come to that focus in that moment in St John's Gospel when Jesus says, "I am the light of the world." So in this time of darkness, this is our prayer. O Oriens, O Dayspring, come.
Oh.